This manhwa starts off with a handsome man embracing a dark-haired girl. The girl is the mysterious protagonist. It was raining heavily outside and a young man and woman were seen in a room, to which the young man addressed the young woman very fondly. "As you say, Neil." He was very happy that Single found him first and attempted to move closer to her. But Single stopped him as she addressed the man by his full name, Test Value Newsville, and asked him if it was true that he ordered that the Viscountess' eldest son should be executed. Test Value News will agree to it, claiming that the Viscountess' son had committed an unjust act worthy of punishment. And that was because the Viscount's son had proposed to use Annual, whom he admires. So Tess Newsville was envious and punished the man. However, Annual was very confused by the way things turned out, as it seemed that Tess Newsville have become someone strange to her. By the way, he was acting in a hospital. An injured lady was brought in with an emergency and the doctor in charge asked for preparation for a blood transfusion. The mother was seen crying and holding her daughter's hands, who eventually passed away. The next moment Samuel was seen as she woke up with a start and discovered that she was having a dream, the same kind of dream she had been having. Her little sister Daniel Hardman noticed her sister's expression and asked if she was hurt somewhere. Samuel's parents, who were Duke and Duchess Milan and Seal Harden, seemed to be worried as well. They even wanted to stop the carriage, but still assured them that she was fine and that it might be because she felt odd returning to the capital for the first time in 14 years. Her parents then laughed when they heard that, as they were relieved, and even said that even though their daughter had matured, she was still there. Cute daughter Inulin. Her family got to their house Dushi Manor and got down from the carriage. Yusinyo felt that nothing much had changed in her hometown for the past 14 years, as it had been 20 years since she got reincarnated into the world she's presently in. She was murdered by an unidentified assailant in her previous life and then found herself in this world. However, she was never intrigued by the kind of development that took place, since she is not a fan of romance novels or video games, and she thought that everything was a dream. Neil was born into one of the founding families of the Buck Empire, the hard-rent Dushi. Meanwhile, Daniel was seen remarking happily about how huge the house they would be living in was. Daniel was born after they were exiled to Bear, and so it was her first time in their hometown. When Houston Yule heard this, she apologized for being the one responsible for their exile, but her parents immediately asked not to do that. And then hugged her, which showed how caring and lovely they were. This made Single feel like she had adjusted to where she was now, whereas she believed that was not her place yet, and informed her parents about her decision to join the Consume Research Institute. It is a national institute that focuses mostly on monitor research and has an extensive history, which makes it enough to help operate the Academy of Nobles. This would help You'll find a clue on how to return to her original world. However, she never imagined that they would authorize her admission immediately, which made it seem like they knew she was coming. But that's better, since she would be much faster in her mono research. As she was walking around the institute, she came across a group of nobles, especially ladies, led by a blonde-haired girl who taunted Annual as soon as she saw him, claiming that the hardware family had been exiled during the previous reign. However, people around tried to caution each other about talking about that, in fear of the king, who was a crown prince during the time of exile. The blonde-haired lady then asked, as she wanted to know if Samuel was from the Hardline family, but Samuel refused to reply to her and just kept wondering if the lady was from the Viscount family who rose to power when the Hardright family went into exile. Meanwhile, Yusinghil does not care about the power struggle between families, as there is no need for her to show mercy to someone who has shown hostility towards her. She laughed and asked if the Viscountess' daughter is really the daughter of a noble family, as she called someone she had never met by her name, and that could only imply that if her family had not taught her etiquette. These statements enraged the lady, who claimed that she is Lily Shane, that she is not just from any noble FA, and that she is going to become the empress. During this time, the king had already gotten to the place unannounced, then was approaching them, to which everyone around immediately paid their respect except Samuel and Lily Shane, who are still bickering at each other and claimed that Yule was from the fallen Harder and family. This made the king finally give in to what she said and claimed that he was the one who ordered the return of the hardware family. When Lily Shane saw the king, she was terrified as she realized that she had violated the king's imperial order, so he ordered that Lily Shane be dragged outside and killed. Samuel was shocked by the brutality and cruelty the king possessed, which made her wonder if it was really Test Value Newsville who rose to the throne. There are many worlds that exist in that universe, each of which is separated from the others, and unaware of each other's existence. But sometimes there are some people who go from one world to another. Those people peaked using his interest right from the time she was 6 years old. She has gone through many books just to find a method for moving between worlds. While she was busy in search of books, at times the young prince would look for her and sit by her side, all because he had grown affection for her, and sometimes he would even ask Signal to marry him so they could always be together. But said it would reject his request because she believed that he was not her type. Whenever Samuel says that to him, he always feels dejected and asks her what her type of man is. But said you will not tell them. After some years she heard that he had finally ascended the throne. Tess, Newsville is the first prince of the Buck Empire. And he is sick of. And he is also used in his childhood friend who always chases her around. However, Yusingul always thought that there was a reason why they did not contact each other for 14 years, but she still congratulated him for ascending the throne. Now Yusingul does see a cold-hearted man around whose appearance looks much like that of Tess William, and she could also see that he was addressed like a king, and she saw Lily's parents begging him to forgive Lily for what she did wrong. Meanwhile, Lily is the youngest daughter of Viscount Shane, and so the young king has stated that all that the previous emperor snatched away from the innocent Hardens should be given back to them. Although Yusinghill was still doubting if it was Test Volume, and she did not believe it because she never thought that his personality could have changed that much. Where is blonde hair and blue eyes? Or signs of being a descendant of the imperial family? Test Volume now has black hair and eyes, which does not make any sense to Samuel. Everything seems strange to Annual despite people not complaining or feeling somehow surprised to see a black emperor. Yusinghill also apologized to the young emperor on Lily's behalf. She asked the young emperor to forgive Lily so everyone could praise him for his good deed and use. Anil knew that if the young emperor was his childhood friend, Tess William, then he would surely listen to her. But then she thought that he might have forgotten who she was. She introduced herself by her name to the young emperor, and he commended her for being generous because it is rare for a lady like her to ask for forgiveness from someone who insulted her family. Then with all that, the young emperor said, Yusinghill now believes that the man is definitely Test Value. Therefore the young emperor ordered that they should not kill Lily, but instead lock her up in the imperial prison. Then he asked if you still would like to show him around the academy, and Yusinghill agreed, even though she was still thinking about how the young emperor was able to change his appearance. The young emperor and Yusinghill walked all through till they reached the forest trail, and Yusinghill herself could not help but imagine what Test William could have used to change his appearance, because it cannot be magic, as she would have felt mana around him. Also, their world does not have contact lenses or hair dye, which Test Volume could have been said to apply to his eyes and hair, so she kept on wondering what had changed in his look. Suddenly the young emperor hugged Yul from behind, apologizing to her for the fact that she was bowing to him and giving him the respect of a young emperor. That was when Samuel, could confirm her curiosity and saw that the young emperor was Test Volume. Meanwhile, Tess William did not know that she could still remember him, and that made him cry or overuse. And you already had a lot of questions he wanted to ask Tess William whenever they met, including why her family was exiled when she was in her 6th year, and why Test William did not send her a single letter for 14 years when they were so close. Right now she could see how Tess William cried in front of her as if she were the only one he had, and she became weaker, as if she had returned to when she was 6 years old. Immediately she remembered about his appearance, and she asked him what was wrong with his eyes and hair color. She asked if something had happened to them, but Tess William asked her in return if she did not like them. Whereas what was important to use, and it was that she wanted to know if he used magic instead. Test Volume replied to her by reminding her of her taste back then when they were still friends, and how she said she loved black eyes and black hair, and that was what made Tesla and change his look. Since Tesco Yun has become an emperor, he does not see any reason why they need to be apart anymore, and she also does not need to endure insults like what happened earlier. Yet everything seemed strange to Yusinghill, like she had fallen into a perfect trap. Test, will you? And then expressed his feelings to her once again, saying that he wanted them to be together. When Yusinghill was still young, She was called the child who did not cry because ever since birth she had become a scary child who always looked straight at her parents. But on the other hand, Test Volume was the child who always cried because ever since he was born he has been a strange and her child who would cry whenever he saw someone. When the emperor was worried that the crown prince did not have any friends, he organized the meeting of two weird children, and since then they've become friends that follow each other around. Although it was annoying to use Annual to have tests, William Guevara make all kinds of excuses to come and go to her house. Single did not really hate back then when they were still young, whenever Samuel was still in search of books that could make her return to her own world. That was when Tess William would come to visit her, when he missed her, and she would sometimes show him the same affection back, because there were times when she would be comforted by his affection towards her right. Then Tess will ask her to marry him, so he will not have to stress himself out by coming to her house again. Instead they will stay together, but Yusinil will try to make him realize that he can only marry once he is over 20 years old and not when he is still young. However, Yusinil thought that her complaints back then were just the complaints of a child who had yet to learn the ways of the world, and you could never have imagined that Test Volume change because of what she said back then, as she thought that there was no way that was possible while she was thinking about all that Test. Will you notice that? Anne asked her what she was thinking all the while, and before she could reply Test William moved close to her and made an attempt to kiss her, but Yusingle pushed him away instead, saying that she would never accept any kind of joke from him anymore. She then asked him once more if it was true that he changed his look all because of what she said, and Tess William replied that he did, including the fact that he changed the emperor's clothing so he could fit her taste, because she said she loves someone who wears black, and he asked her if she really loved it. Test will united that if she also wants him to change the decorations to black, then he will do it, as he is ready to do anything just for her to accept him. Yusingle demanded to know how he changed his appearance, but Tess William did not answer her, and she kept on pestering him, untestable. Yoon requested that she marry him so he could tell her what he did to change his appearance. But Yu still thought in her mind that her family might be kicked out of Baron just because he changed his appearance. So she got angry and told him not to mind telling her again. Instead, she told her that she was going back home. Festival Yoon then asks her if he can also follow her because it has been a long time since he went there. But Samuel did not allow him. Test will and then tells her that he has a present to give her, but still Annual rejects it as well. Yet Tess William presented the gift to her. It was an entrance pass for the Royal Library. He then told her that the library has finished the construction of a new annex, and so it has more books, a B game whereby Samuel, can rent any book outside of the banned book section. Meanwhile Tess William gave her the gift because he knew that she liked reading books and because the gift relates to what Yusingle loves doing. She accepted the gift and turned to walk away. So Tesla and told her that he would be waiting for him at the palace, so she should return quickly because his patience was running thin at that time. He then left through teleportation, and Houston Yule was shocked that he could use teleportation, the highest level of magic use, and Neil was later seen having a sword fight with a royal guard at all there after they took a break. As Yusingle commented, Medal is now weak, but Ital knew that Yusinhil has become too strong to the extent that she now calls the royal guard weak, although it all thought that she was too strong because of her health, blood, and as soon as Yusinhil entered the capital, she enrolled in the consume, and so she has the stamina to train her sword skills for days. You could see that Ethel was so busy with his night work that he was not able to even write her letter, but that all swore to her, so she could believe him that he kept sending letters to her. And he also made her know that he worked so hard in writing the letters. Yule then asked Ethel if he had been going to the palace even after also noticed Test William that he had changed, but in Adel's view he felt like Test Volume was still the same as when he was a crown prince. And that Test Volume had not changed after that particular day. Everyone else and you'll ask about Test Volume's appearance changes, and they all had the same answer as that all Test William did not change at all, but using your thought that they all did not know that Test Volume's appearance had changed. But Ital included that there has been something strange happening, which is that ever since Test Filian became the emperor, there has always been a bloody wind blowing, and so Ital advised Yusingle not to get involved with it. Yule also felt that what Edel said was right, because she has a feeling that she should not get involved as well. But Yusingle thought that Tess Wu used magic for all the changes in his appearance, and so she cannot afford to lose the chance she has to El because she wanted to learn more about the magic. She went back to Tesco Union. Test William was surprised to see that she would come back as he had waited for so long. The empire was a land divided into two major factions locked in a simmering power struggle. On one side stood the founding Duke faction, a group of influential nobles with deep-rooted connections to the empire's history and traditions. On the other side was the faction supported by the Empress, the sole woman who had won the favor of the late emperor and wielded considerable influence within the court. Originally the plan had been for the Empress of the Duke's family to be chosen from among the daughters of these venerable dukes. It was a carefully calculated move intended to strengthen the bond between the Empresses. Faction was met with resistance, leading to the abandonment of the original plan. The consequences for Yus in Hill's family were profound. Their hopes of securing a powerful position within the empire were dashed. They were left with no choice but to relinquish their ambitions, all because Test Value News will had an eye for you, Samuel. In the midst of this political turmoil, a rumor began to circulate. Whispers in the court corridors suggested that you, Samuel, had returned from her exile and was making her way to the palace. However, you Samuel harbored mixed feelings about this return. She was torn between her desire to assert her presence in the empire and her reluctance to inflict further harm on her family. 14 years in exile had already taken a heavy toll on you, Samuel's family. The burden of her actions weighed heavily on her shoulders. It was her defiance, her unwillingness to conform to the expectations of the court, that had led to their exile in the first place. You, Samuel, couldn't bear the thought of causing her family more pain as Yusinul contemplated her return. Her mind drifted back to the events of 14 years ago. She vividly remembered the day the former king summoned her and her family to the imperial court. There had been an unsettling awe about the king that day, a palpable tension in the air. The king's questions had been peculiar. He inquired about using his preference for the color black in her ideal type. Someone with dark hair and black eyes using Yul had answered truthfully, but her attempts to explain herself were abruptly cut short by the king's loud piercing screams. Panic had gripped the court as the king's outburst continued. At that moment, Yusamhil's mother Seal stepped forward, instinctively shielding her daughter from the king's. Seal's actions were driven by maternal love and a protective instinct. She implored the king to choose his words carefully, reminding him of the gravity of his position and the importance of his role in maintaining order within the empire. The king's tirade, however, did not cease. He accused Yus in Yellow being the cause of the prince's rejection of an elf, emphasizing her illegitimate birth is the root of all problems. It was a moment that forever scarred you, Samuel, and her family. Casting them into exile and ignominy, now Yusinul contemplated her return to the palace. The memories of that fateful day haunted her. She couldn't shake the feeling that her presence in the empire was a source of turmoil and suffering for her family. Despite the rumors of her return, she was reluctant to reopen old wounds and disrupt the fragile peace they had managed to find in exile, and that the elves are symbols of virtue and purity. So for the king to say that her daughter mixed with elf blood is illegitimate means that he is pathetic. And that whatever happened to his son was his choice. This prompted the king to order that Yusinul be exiled to Baron, but her parents refused and said that they could leave her alone and would rather be exiled as well, to which the king agreed and said that was the utmost consideration he could have for the Heartland's family use. Annual was seen as she entered the royal library, where she discovered that it was much bigger than before. However, she saw an old man who seemed to be the library keeper. The library keeper wanted to inform you Samuel about the limit on those who are not of the royal family, but then recognized her. He was very happy to see her after the exile and explained that the king instructed him to collect all the books Yusinul had shown interest in since she was younger. He then directed her to the golden book section, then asked her to call him if she needed any help. While Samuel was later seen reading and checking out the books she had picked. She then thought of how Texelyun left her family in exile for a year after ascending the throne. Even though she doesn't hate life in Baron, and even got good training from an excellent swordsman, she was not happy with the way her family was being treated then. It was difficult for her to find books about magic there. And she was beginning to give up hope of returning to the world she once knew. But she couldn't let that go, even though it wasn't his fault. It was at this time that Esvolin arrived beside her, to which she was startled, and recalled that she deliberately did not write her name in the entry list as she sneaked in trying not to catch his attention and wondered about how he was to know that she was in the library that quickly. Houston, you'll then ask how possible it was that no one talked about his appearance, which had changed totally. However, Tess William was seen as he approached her closely and held hands with her, saying that he was happy that she was curious about him. But you? Samuel replied by shoving her on the table and claiming that she wouldn't be seeing her again. They both looked into each other's eyes for a while. Until the silence was broken by Tess Williams' laughter saying that you Samuel is quite stronger than she looks. Meanwhile until then asked him to stop messing around, but he continued to bring his face closer to hers and tried to kiss her, but was shoved away again by Houston Hill, who was quite ************. By the way, he as Test William was seen as he sat down with his back on the shelves and said that it was quite harsh of her to push him away without explanation. And so it seemed that Yusin have met a good swordsman in Baron, as she had grown stronger than when they were kids. Yusin then realized that Tess You knew about her mentor and discovered that something about Testable Unit had changed. Not just his appearance, she felt the uneasiness which strangely irked her and drew her attention, but she couldn't understand why her eyes kept looking at him, and that may be because she is just attracted to his new appearance as he is quite looked away, blushing. Test, will you notice this? And smiled, saying that Yusingle does love dark looks and that he is glad it caught her attention, which means that it was worth the price he paid you. Samuel was startled by the word price. So she asked him about how he was able to change his looks so that no one had noticed his transformation and asked him to answer her truthfully. He was silent for a while before he finally said that he had made a pact with the Imperial Palace. Yusingle was shocked when she heard that Tess Young began to explain something fascinating. He talked about how the first emperor of the land a long time ago had a big challenge. You see, he united the northern part of the continent to create an empire. But he worried that his own people might betray him. This was because they were constantly fighting with the empires in the south. And the nobles in his own empire were always fighting for power among themselves. So what the first emperor did was something really unusual. He made a deal with the Imperial Palace. This deal allowed him to keep an eye on everyone in the palace, and this ability was passed down to future emperors. Basically, it means that the entire palace is like Tess William's personal space. Cast William continued, saying that this secret power is only known to the emperors and their successors. He also mentioned that his own abilities are even stronger than those of those who came before him. He can even manipulate the memories of people who have been inside the castle, which is pretty incredible. Yusingle was surprised that Tess William could talk about having such immense powers so casually. She realized that during his coronation, all the nobles had visited the palace, making it easier for no one to talk about his transformation. However, Yusingle felt that there must be more to this story. She thought it wasn't just about the first emperor's strong magic. There had to be a powerful force or something strange involved, especially if this ability was being passed down through generations. This made her want to learn more about magic and its secrets. But then Yusingle realized something strange. Her memories were still intact, unlike the others. Festival explained that it was because she's a half-elf. Elves, fairies, and other children of light are resistant to the abilities of the royal family. Curious about what might happen if she decided to reveal the truth to everyone you'll ask. Test, will you know what he would do to her? She wanted to playfully tease him for ignoring her for 14 years. Tess William responded by saying she wouldn't do that because she's always on his side. This was partly true, but Yusingle wanted him to consider her feelings after seeing how much he had changed. However, Test William asked her to wait and inquired if she liked his transformation. Houston, you thought about it and realized that if things continue this way, Lily Shane might be in danger. She told Tess William to do whatever he pleased and left the library. Yusingle needed some time to sort out her feelings. She decided it would be best for them to keep their distance from each other. Meanwhile, Tess William was left alone in the library, tears welling up in his eyes. He said that he couldn't live with of her showing just how deep his feelings for Samuel ran. Tess William that asked if she also disliked him, but Yusingle could not understand what he meant by the word. Also because she could remember him saying that she was the only one on his side back then when they were still young. They both attended magic lessons together, which Test Volume was happy about, and Yusingle also saw that as a good opportunity for her to attend the Grand Mage class. 14 years ago Samuel and Tess William both visited the Grand Mage, who is called the epitome of magic. Yusingle did not know if the Grand Mage would know how to cross dimensions, or perhaps he could notice that she is from another world and also that she is reincarnated, and the Grand Mage could see that Yusingle was very polite and then test fully and added that Samuel is also incredibly smart as well as the prettiest, kindest in the world, even included that Yusingle would marry him. But you said you always got angry for having him say such things in front of the Empress courtiers, so she always cautioned whatever he said such things. But Test Volume would ask her why she shut him up. abuse, and you would let him know that someone might eavesdrop on or hear him when he was saying such things. Or over Tess. William did not feel anything wrong with that. The grandmaids taught about people's beliefs when it comes to magic. People do think of rituals and spells when dealing with magic, but all magic originates from Mona because Mona is the form of energy that sustains life. The grandmage told them back then that they would need to understand all about Mona before they could start an official class use. And you would ask questions about the angel and the lumberjack in the folklore of Mount Gwenex and then. Meanwhile, she just wanted to ask the Grand Mage if he knows about it because she has already read it in a book about the story of the angel and the lumberjack. The lumberjack stole the clothes of an angel who came down to the pond of Mount Gwenex, and the angel fell in love with him but had to return to heaven. Folklore is usually based on real events. What she really wanted to know about the story was that the sky where the angel lives and the earth where the lumberjack lives are different. For once then, using Yule wondered why she was reborn. She questioned herself if the angel could have also crossed dimensions. She then asked the Grand Mage if there is a way to cross to another world, and the Grand Mage replied that the essence of the question is mana. Because Mount Gwennshin is a famous place known for where a lot of mana is gathered from generation to generation. So if they use them on of the mountain, opening a door to another world will not be possible at all. However, there is a way, but unfortunately the Grand Maids did not know of a way to open such a door, even though it was possible because it was an angel that crossed worlds, and no matter how hard humans try, they would never be able to achieve such a feat. Rather, you single felt like she eventually found a way to return to her previous world this time around. Still Mount Guadix and has remained a mystery since ancient times. The Grand Maids thought that there might be a passage connected to another world, but if there are non-human entities like ancient dragons or gods, then they might know of a way. Texelyun then asked if demons could also know of such ways, but he was cautioned by using Hill, who told him not to utter such ominous words as demons or wicked beings that lure humans with sweet words. Back then, when they were still young, Testable, you always liked to sleep over. It used in his place to the extent that he did not care if the Empress would scold him for doing so, and sometimes he would beg you single to stay at the palace with him using. Neil would not want to stay because she did not feel comfortable staying there, and Testelyuna felt like she was uncomfortable since she was too kind. The palace was all gloomy, but Samuel was the only cheerful person in there. At times Tesla Windows forced her to sleep with him in the palace, and when it is at night he will kiss her and remind her to get married to him. Tess Williams' behavior at that time always annoyed you Samuel, while other times it comforted her, and names very use, and Yule still loves the affection he has for him. One night Yusinyul had a dream that transported her back to a painful scene from her previous life. In the dream, she found herself in a hospital room, her own life slipping away. Her mother was there, heartbroken and in tears by her side. Yusinyul watched the whole heart-wrenching scene unfold, feeling the pain she had endured back then. It was as though she was reliving the moment she had been stabbed with a knife. In her previous life, the vividness of these dreams has haunted her ever since she was reborn into this new world. These recurring dreams, especially the ones where she faced her own death, left you, Samuel, with a deep sense of unease. It was almost as if this world was rejecting her, urging her to return to the world she once knew. It felt like a curse of relentless reminder of her past life suffering. One morning Yusinyul decided to break free from the weight of her dreams. She suggested to Texelyun that they have breakfast together. With his support, she got out of bed and made her way to the dining room. To her surprise, the dining table was covered with a diverse array of delicious meals prepared with care. Her mother, who had always been a pillar of strength, came into the room. Yusingle couldn't help but remark on her mother's unwavering strength, even in the face of her daughter's strange dreams and inner turmoil. Her mother, named Seal, expressed her deep love for you, Samuel, and suggested that since you, Samuel WA, it might be better for her to sleep with them. It was a gesture filled with warmth and concern, a reminder of the deep bond between mother and daughter in this new world they were navigating together. Shortly after Samuel and her mother shared a loving moment. Her father entered the room, his presence commanding attention. He reminded both his wife and daughter to behave properly. It was clear that in this new world they held a certain level of respect and decorum for the royal family. The family gathered around the table to have their meal, a time of togetherness and nourishment. However, something seemed amiss. Testily, and the crown prince struggled to hold his utensils properly, his hands seemed unsteady, and his movements were not as fluid as they should be using. You'll notice test volumes, difficulty, and without hesitation offered him her own portion of the meal, which she had thoughtfully cut into small, manageable pieces. Concerned, she gently asked Tess, Will you need to show her his hands, wondering if he had hurt himself? Her mother seal observed using Hill's caring gesture and couldn't help but make an observation. She playfully noted that you said you'll seem to have a soft spot for the crown prince use. Annyeol denied it, but deep down she knew that her feelings for test volume were complex. Houston, you'll have experienced that difficult and painful life. In her previous existence, her father had abandoned their family to live with another woman, leaving her mother to shoulder the responsibilities alone. This ordeal had taken a toll on her mother's health, which had deteriorated due to her father's infidelity. Despite all the hardships, her mother had showered Yu's Annyeol with love and care, causing her to always carry the memory of her mother's enduring love. Whenever you sing, you'll look to test full units stirred memories of her mother and the love that had sustained her through tough times. This connection with her mother's love made you single, naturally inclined to take care of Tess Williams and be compassionate towards him. Even if she didn't fully acknowledge her feelings for the crown prince, Tess Williams had a personality that reminded you Samuel of her mother in many ways. He could be a bit clumsy at times, and he wasn't shy about shedding a few tears here and there. Even when he experienced pain, he would often put on a brave face and flash his smile afterward. These traits and tests will always stirred memories of her mother, who had been a pillar of strength and kindness in her previous life. Yusinil couldn't help but wonder about her mother's well-being after her own death. She hoped that her mother held no ill feelings towards her for leaving that world behind. While she had come to love her new family in this world, Yusinil couldn't shake her worry about her mother's loneliness, knowing that she had been left to face life's challenges on her own. These thoughts fuel Yus and his determination to find a way to return to her original world as soon as possible, putting an end to the recurring nightmares and reuniting with her mother. She remembered a lesson from one of her teachers who had spoken about Mount Guanshin, a place shrouded in mystery. Some believe that it held a gateway to another world. If beings like ancient dragons or gods existed, they might possess knowledge of how to traverse between worlds. Driven by this possibility, Samuel, couldn't resist the urge to ask her mother Seal if she had any insights into traveling between worlds. She knew that this was a long shot, but her longing to return home and her concern for her mother's well-being were strong motivators. However, Yu's in his quest was marked by a countdown. 100 days remained until a significant event in the Heartland family's life occurred, adding a sense of urgency to her search for answers and a way back to her original world. Seal was taken aback by her daughter's inquiry about traversing between different worlds. It was a subject she hadn't expected to come up at the breakfast table. Curiosity peaks. She gently asked Samuel, why she was so interested in such matters. Yusinil realized that she couldn't reveal her true origins, so she crafted a believable explanation. She explained that she had been attending classes with the Grand Mage, and there was a particular aspect that puzzled her. Given that her mother was the only elf in the capital, she thought that Seal might have some insights or answers that could help her. Her mother Seal smiled at Yus in his request for guidance and remarked how good it felt to be acknowledged by her daughter. Yusinil, however, harbored a deep sense of guilt for keeping the truth about her origins a secret from her newfound parents. She longed for their forgiveness, but she couldn't bring herself to reveal the full truth. Regrettably, Seal explained that she couldn't provide any information about other worlds. She went on to reveal a surprising detail. While she had indeed come from the fairy realm, there was a secret among elves in the human realm. Unlike fairies, who were born and lived exclusively in the fairy realm, elves were bound by a restrictive contract that forbade them from sharing certain truths when residing in the human realm. This contract was a safeguard to maintain the order of the world. Yusinil couldn't contain her frustration and asked about the origin of this contract, wondering which god had created. Unfortunately, her mother couldn't provide an answer to that either. The disappointment weighed heavily on Samuel, as this had been her last hope of finding out more about her past and the possibility of returning to her original world. Yus in his quest for answers continued as she delved into the family's library test. Will you? Noticing her determination was right there with her, offering his support and trying to keep her calm. Research led her to a particular book she had been hoping to find, and she eagerly started reading it. The book revealed a fascinating tale of the gods of this world. It spoke of Lux, the god of light, and Demon, the god of darkness, who were present at the beginning of everything. Lux was credited as the creator of the continent and the one who taught and protected humans, shielding them from the temptations of demons. However, as time passed, the gods vanished, leaving the continent divided between those who believed in their existence and those who didn't. This division has sparked countless wars throughout history. The latter part of the book recounts the history of their northern empire, highlighting their victories since the first emperor. Despite Yu's Anil's hopes, she couldn't find any useful information in the book regarding her own predicament. Test will you observe using illness? She closed the book with a hint of frustration. Sensing that something was bothering her, he inquired about her well-being using. You're clearly preoccupied. Asked him if he was planning to return to the palace. Tess Williams' response was surprising. He confessed that he wanted to stay a bit longer because he liked Yu Single very much. Even shared that his parents had expressed their belief that he could marry a really nice person. However, Yu Single quickly urged him not to say such things in front of others, especially his mother, the Empress. She revealed that the Empress was against the idea and had even been trying to connect Tess Volume with the young master of the Duchy of Sheep. Yu Single continued, explaining that Tess Volume would need to be of age to get married. She also described her ideal type of man to him as someone who didn't cry, was skilled in magic but not arrogant, and had black hair and eyes. It was a moment of candidness between the two, and the topic of marriage added a layer of complexity to their already intricate relationship. Yu Single couldn't help but chuckle at Tess Williams' attempt to sway her opinion about her ideal type of man. She teasingly agreed with him, saying that he did know her quite well. She was about to make her way out of the library when Test Volume, on the verge of tears, Doctor, he admitted to being a blonde with blue eyes and wondered if he could change her preferences. With a playful grin, Yu's Annual gently yanked her dress away from him. Teased Test Williams, saying he had already failed the no-crying part of her ideal. She went on to explain that tastes could indeed change, but it wasn't as simple as changing one's appearance. Test will you not want to give up easily made another attempt to change her mind. He promised her the world, offering to let her read any books she wanted, take classes every day, and even shower her with jewels and dresses. However, Yu Single remained resolute. She told Tess William that throwing a tantrum wouldn't get him his way, and that changing someone's heart couldn't be forced. Recognizing that it was time to return to the palace, Yu Single suggested they head back. Test Will, Yu, not wanting to be apart from her, proposed a compromise. He said he would go with her if she held his hand. Single sighed, realizing that she couldn't deny it. William's request as she held his hand. Test William couldn't help but ponder how he could capture her attention and win her love, knowing that he wanted more than just her kindness. Their complex relationship was beginning to evolve, and the challenges it presented only seemed to deepen their connection. When Yu Single was young, she fought with Count Guard, the former captain of the Imperial Knights of the Crown Prince's current bodyguard. And she has been doing well with sword skills right from when she was young, to the extent that Count Guard commended her for the fact that she has good form. And he asked her one day if she had learned how to wield a sword before. But Samuel did not answer Guard. At that time Medal was 8 years old, and he used to attend the same sword lesson together with Yu. Also, whenever Samuel did not attend the lesson, he would look for her and get her to attend the lesson, and sometimes Yu Single would give us excuses that she would not be able to make it that day during their sparring sessions. Yu Single be that'll do the extra lessons. She had a Count Guard, but Yu still believed that she always won whenever she fought with it all because he was weaker than her. Test Will, Yu always gets jealous. Auntie Metal comes to call Yu Samuel for a sword lesson, and he would chase Metal away, telling him that Samuel would not be able to attend the lesson and instead would be spending time with him. The excuse Yu Single gave that day made her think she had gotten through Test Volume, yet she knew that he would still throw tantrums. In fact, William's outbursts grew worse as time went by, and he tried to separate Yu Single from Metal and everyone else around her. If you said you wanted to play with other girls, he would prefer Yu Single playing with him instead, and he would also ask her not to talk to anyone's. That made him cry. As a result of all that, Yu and his family became the topic of gossip, claiming that her family is trying to make their daughter the crown princess and that the king also favors Yu Singhil's family. Some rumors even suggest that perhaps the crown prince had been brainwashed. Nonetheless, Yu Single never thought that Tess Williams' obsession and affection towards her were a serious problem, because she merely thought that Tess William was just clinging to her because he was still a child and that she was his first friend ever, and that made her promise Tess William that he would always be her friend no matter who she met. Which comment William down about long after testing and had an early growth spurt. He was not able to visit Samuel because of his growing pains. Even Neil was denied visiting him, but she did not feel like meeting him again. Rather, she missed her magic lessons of the palace. Then her mother decided to use the opportunity to make her have sword training with Battle, hoping that it would be better if they both got engaged. Because her mother thought that way Neil would be able to put More distance between herself and the Crown Prince. Use Annual did not know if her mother was saying all that because of the rumors, and her mother let her know that she cared much about those kinds of rumors. However, her mother does have a kind of feeling that it will not be good if you, Samuel, grows closer to the Crown Prince, and her mother claimed that the feeling was from what her elf's intuition was telling her. Use Annual then wondered why her mother had been pretty open about her and Use Annual also did not see anything wrong with getting engaged to Test. Fully Use Annual knew that if she was to have a fiancé then Test Volume would have no choice but to watch his behavior around her, and so everyone would finally lose interest in her and her family. Whereas Usingle did not plan on growing close to anyone when she already had it in mind that she would be returning to her original world at some point in time. And because of that she could not deep in her relationship with anyone in that world. So she told her mother not to bother about her relationship with Tesla Units. He was just like a brother to her and nothing more. But there was a contradiction to what she told her mother, because Tesla Unit grown a considerable amount when he saw him again as he had become much taller than before. She went to visit him then and she could not help but imagine how he could have developed that much, but Tess Williams still had the same behavior as he still sent guards away for him and using Hill to be alone, and he always corrected using Hill to stop speaking politely to him and that she should not bow to him either. He also told her not to treat him like a stranger because that would make his heart feel like it had been torn apart. Tess, will you notice her face turning red, but Use Annual quickly looked away saying that it only happens to her whenever she feels any and that is when she is at the palace. And so she had to mind the prying eyes of the people as well as her advocates starting from the checkpoint at the entrance, still where the prince was. It felt exhausting to her as well. Then Test William lets her know that he will change everything to make it easier for her to travel anywhere in the Empire if she wants it that way. But you still did not understand how he would be able to change the Empire's laws and Test William told her that it would be a sec urged her to be patient with him, though Use and you could not clearly recall the look on his face back then. That was when her elf's intuition activated. For the first time ever, all the nobles of the Viscount rank in higher were invited to the first official event the palace has held since the Crown Prince's recovery. The banquet hall was so crowded that everyone thought that they must leave a good impression on the imperial family. It was then that the Harvard family arrived as well, including Yusa Neal at the sight of her. There were whispers around saying that the dress she was wearing was a gift from the king due to the Crown Prince's recovery. Meanwhile Yusa and you could hear what they were saying, to which she felt stressed already and wanted to go home. It was then that a blonde noble girl of the same age as you, Samuel Orange, shy and arrived. People began to gossip about how they learned that Yus Inyalin or In Cheon were on bad terms as they were fighting over the position princess. During this time the decorum was maintained as the royal family arrived, to which everyone greeted the king as they bowed their heads and he acknowledged them as well. The king was seen as he gave his wife the empress a kiss for doing a good job in preparing a splendid banquet, which implies how much he cares for the empress. Houston, you'll notice that the look on the prince's face was quite pale as though he was sick. Immediately after Test William looked in her direction as well in their gazes met. This prompted Test Volume to attempt to leave his parents' side but he was held down by his mother who asked him to protect his dignity since everyone was watching him. But Test's will unit is not care, he wants to talk to you soon. He'll. This made all the nobles begin to murmur, since it was shown that Test William clearly favored using Yule more than the other and that they wondered how the Harder and family was able to have the crown prince in their palms. Use and Yule heard all that they were saying. She knew that all of the empire's nobles and that the bigger the commotion grows the worse things will be for her family and she does not want to cause them any trouble. But what is to come? Will she continue to be distant and yearn for her return to her past life? What will happen to the characters she has met? Will she realize her strange feelings to the elves? Comment elf below for part 2 and why not check out this epic recommendation, Enemies to Lovers.